Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. How
Yeah,
have things been? Good?
really good. hmm
Nice.
Really mastering this online teaching format and loving it.
I know it's different, but I feel like some people prefer to the original of like in person, and I think it's a different way of doing it, and people are adjusting.
Yeah, I think it's apples and oranges. I mean, I resisted it until COVID hit, and then I was forced into it. The first couple of weeks were really rocky, and now it just feels very second nature. And it's just so good to be able to be with people in this way and to be able to continue my work. So
Nice, nice. I'm just
how many
looking.
people usually come? I'm just wondering if I should wait a little bit
So
longer.
I think Ahmad, are you here? Yep. Okay. So Lindsay and Megan are working on stuff for Epic. So they won't be joining us, and Joe won't be joining us. He's on vacation.
Mhm.
So the only one that might join us, and if he might be running a little bit late, is Matt. Other than that, everybody else is here.
Okay. So
I think Tim is looking to join as well.
okay. Well, I'll wait a couple of minutes. And then I'll go ahead and get started. And this is being recorded, so anyone who is unable to be here can watch the recording. How have you been enjoying the signature series so far?
I've been loving it.
Yeah, good, good. It's powerful. And everything that you've done up to this point really prepares you for the next three sessions. Mindfulness of feelings, which I'll be guiding you through. It's an aspect of mindfulness that is very close to my heart, and it's one of my favorite aspects of this training. And it's also an invitation to really dive deep. So I'm hoping you'll learn a lot and you'll experience a lot. I'm going to wait just one more minute, and then we're going to actually launch right into a practice. And this practice can be a game changer. Um, I'm going to take you through it in a formal way. But what I want you to know about what we're about to do is that it is something that you can use as a micro practice, and you can drop into it anytime, anywhere, and it can help to shift you out of a stress state. So, to that end, let's go ahead and get started. All right, sound good? Okay. So, I want to introduce you to a practice called the self compassion break. And the reason that I want to start here with regard to this new part of this journey we're taking, mindfulness of feelings, which is lesson 5, 6, and 7. We spend a lot of time on this topic area, and for good reason. But one of the things that we've discovered, and I think it's just part of being a human being, is many of us are incredibly hard on ourselves related to how we feel. And it's one of the reasons that our feelings and our emotional states can be so difficult to grapple with, because we have what we call a secondary level of stress related to feelings. In other words, this happens every time I feel bad about how I'm feeling. So the self-compassion break is a wonderful way for us to give ourselves a break and to have the experience of what it means to be really compassionate with ourselves related to how we feel. So I'd like for you to just take a moment and to come into a very comfortable position. Excuse me. So if you're seated, um, sort of allow yourself to come very comfortable in that seat. And I want to invite you to close your eyes, always remembering that the invitation to close your eyes is just that. It's an invitation. If it doesn't feel good for you to close your eyes, what you want to do is you want to keep your eyes focused, centered, and then slightly down. And just relax your gaze so that the eye muscles are nice and relaxed. And I want you to take a very deep breath in, almost exaggerating. Take a very, very deep breath in. And as you exhale, allow the face and the jaw to relax. Taking another deep breath in. And as you exhale, allow the shoulders to relax. And yet another deep breath in. And as you exhale, allow everything to relax. And now just allow the breath to be just as it is. And as we're starting to settle the system down just a little bit, I want you to bring to mind in a real gentle way something that's been a challenge for you recently. Something that's been hard. Something that's felt like a struggle. Just gently bring it to mind. And I just want you to spend the next few moments acknowledging this is hard. This is something that's been taxing me. This is difficult. We're just acknowledging it. And now, if just for a moment, you could extend your awareness beyond yourself, maybe out and into other people you know, a community of people you love and care about, even the entire globe. And know that whatever it is that's feeling hard, that there are people out there that have felt this, are feeling this, or might come to feel this very same challenge. So there is this sense that whatever it is, you're not alone. And now, bringing the awareness back to whatever it is, that challenge. The acceptance of it. This is hard. I'm not alone in this. I want to invite you to be really kind with yourself about it. So if you've had any of those secondary feelings of stress, maybe judging yourself for feeling this way, can you just be kind with yourself in feeling challenged by whatever this is? And just notice if there's any part of you that's resisting that kindness. And notice if there's any part of you that is finding a little bit of solace in being kind with yourself. And very gently guide your awareness back to your breath. Just noticing the quality of the breath. Remembering that this is your time. And so only when you're ready, open your eyes, let the light back in, just coming back into this shared virtual space. So I want to just say a couple of things about that practice and why it's important. Why it's important neurologically, and what happens to the body, to your biochemical state, your hormonal state, in just that short period of time. So the self-compassion break has science behind it. It comes from the work of Dr. Kristin Neff and Dr. Christopher Germer, who actually study the neuroscience of self-compassion. And their findings are pretty remarkable. I took the mindfulness of self-compassion training last summer, and I took it because I was really interested in teaching mindfulness of self-compassion. And I learned in the first session, I really came to understand that I needed to let go of thoughts of teaching mindfulness of self-compassion because I needed it. Because even in the first session, I got a glimpse into how hard I can be on myself. So what happens during what we just did? The first thing I asked for you to do is to bring into your mind the thought of something that's been kind of weighing you down, something that's been really difficult. And step one is acknowledging, God, this is really hard, or this is causing me some kind of suffering. And it's just the acknowledgement of it. I'm not trying to fix it, change it, make it go away. I'm not trying to talk myself out of whatever it is. It's just, this sucks. That's step one in the self-compassion break. Step two is interesting. And what it is called is connecting to common humanity. And in step two, I asked you to sort of take your awareness outside of yourself, whether it's to just people who are pretty immediate to you, maybe your colleagues, and then sort of expanding out, maybe the entire planet, and to recognize that there are people all over the planet, even right now, who are feeling something similar, who have felt how you're feeling about this, who have faced this challenge, or will. Now, what's important about that step is that what we're not doing is saying, you know what, you're not the only one who feels this way, so get over it. We're connecting to common humanity because when we're really struggling with something that feels big, most of the time, we often feel like we're the only ones who are feeling this way. And there's a lot of solace in connecting, even energetically, outside of yourself and knowing I'm not alone in this suffering. That creates a state of comfort and a little bit of safety in whatever it is, and it doesn't matter what it is. You're not alone. And then the third step seems really simple, but it's actually the most difficult part of the self-compassion break. And that is, I know that I'm suffering. I know that I'm not alone. So can I just be kind? And it's that step that on the surface makes perfect sense, but is so hard for so many of us to do, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we can be very hard on ourselves related to how we're feeling. I shouldn't feel this way. Have you ever had the experience of being angry because you're angry? Or feeling anxious because you have anxiety? In other words, when you do that, and we call that feeling at a meta level. It's how you feel about how you feel. When we do that, and we do it, we create a secondary level of stress. It's like saying to yourself, I'm not okay with how I'm feeling. And so I'm going to judge myself. I'm going to badger myself. I'm going to be really hard on myself for feeling as I do. So the self-compassion break does a couple of things for us neurochemically. The first thing it does, when I acknowledge this is really hard, I start to move myself out of stress response. So I'm starting to quiet down all of the cortisol and adrenaline that might be coursing through my bloodstream. I'm saying, you know what? I'm just going to acknowledge this. This sucks. It's hard. Step 2, I'm not alone, begins to generate oxytocin, which is a really important hormone because it's sedating in nature. It helps us to feel safe and protected. And the most important aspect of oxytocin is that it keeps us willing to stay connected to others. Because one of the things we do when we're stressed about how we're feeling is we can retreat and shut down. When I've got lots of oxytocin happening, it primes me for connection. The best way to describe the functionality of oxytocin in a very visceral way is if you've ever been held in a loving embrace for a prolonged period of time. Oxytocin is affectionately known as the cuddle hormone. It is the hormone that gets generated when we are being held and holding another person. It's one of the reasons why most of us feel so good when we are being held in a loving embrace. There is something hormonally and chemically that's happening. And so the human embrace is essential to oxytocin being produced. It's one of the reasons why newborns bond so intensely with their primary caregiver, especially when there's skin-to-skin contact right here next to the heart. Both babies, newborns, and their caregivers need that generation of oxytocin in order for that strong bonding to occur right from the get-go. And if that is interrupted for any reason, we know there are issues related to socially attaching, emotionally attaching later on in life. It is that important. So this very simple practice, the first thing I'm doing is taking myself out of stress response. I'm suffering. I'm not alone. Start to generate oxytocin. And then finally, being kind. Every time you engage in an act of self-compassion and you mean it, you're not acting it, you mean it. Again, you start to generate the oxytocin. You don't need another person. You don't need another body to generate oxytocin. You can do it yourself merely by facilitating within yourself great compassion for others and for yourself. In lesson 3 of Mindfulness of Feelings, I'll talk with you about the neuroscience of compassion and the kinds of changes that we, again, experience hormonally, biochemically, neurologically, whenever we're extending compassion in the direction of another person or a community of people. Compassion and self-compassion benefits everyone, ourselves included. So that was a lot, but I wanted to take you through that practice, and what I want to invite you to do over the course of the next 3 lessons while I'm with you, so it's going to be every other week, is I want you to practice this self-compassion break. Every time you're feeling the discomfort of something that's really weighing on you, every time you notice you're getting really judgmental with yourself about how you're feeling, every time you feel like you're suffering over something, I want you to stop and say these 3 things to yourself. All right, I'm suffering, or this is hard, or this sucks, whatever it is. Number 2, I'm not alone in this. And number 3, all right, I need to be kind. You just walk yourself through those 3 steps. It takes less than 10 seconds to do that. And if you do it and you really mean it and you feel it, you will move yourself out of stress response. If you don't believe me, do it for 30 days. Commit to the self-compassion break. It's what I did, because when I first learned about it as part of the training, I thought it was complete bullshit. And then I decided I'm going to do it for 30 days. If I hear something that I'm not quite certain about, but I kind of think it's intriguing, I will try it for 30 days. This is how I understood how hard I am on myself, because every time a challenge came up, especially related to how I was feeling about something, I walked myself through the 3 steps. And by the time I got to part 3, which was, okay, just be kind, I started to get really comfortable with that. And wow, what a relief that's been. The self-compassion break as a mindfulness practice has created so much freedom for me, because I was able to see how emotionally imprisoned I was, and I was holding the key. And I'm hoping that these 3 lessons of mindfulness of feelings is going to free you in some really important ways. So I want to pause and just ask if some of you might share how that felt for you, both the practice, even if it felt terrible, say it felt terrible, how it felt for you. And if anything of what I just said actually resonates with you related to compassion, self-compassion, how you feel about your own feelings. Feel free to unmute if you'd like to share.
I'll share. I feel like you probably don't know it, but when you are super hard on yourself, it doesn't only affect you, but it affects other people. Mm-hmm. And then to just try more self-care, not even for you, for other people. And I didn't really think about that until today. So.
Yeah, you make such an important point. It's just, it goes back to that analogy of put your mask on first, when you're flying, your oxygen mask on first. And it also reminds me of how utterly stressful and draining it is to be hard on yourself. And you're right. that spills over and into the lives of others. They feel it, they experience it. And then you cannot be there for them in the way that they deserve and in the way that they need. So if you're here and like me, you're one of those people that can be brutal with yourself, practice this. Give it 30 days and see what happens. Anyone else? Okay, well then I'm going to move forward. So welcome to your upcoming sessions on mindfulness of feelings. Mindfulness of breath, finding your anchor, mindfulness of body, all these modules that you've already moved through, these lessons, really provides the foundation from which now we can enter into the realm of feeling and the realm of emotion. So again, just to sort of back it up by a little bit of neuroscience, I'm very, very drawn to the work of Dr. Mark Brackett. He published a book called Permission to Feel just last year. If any of you are tuning into Dr. Brene Brown's podcast, she's only about 12 episodes in. Episode 3 or 4, she interviews Dr. Mark Brackett, and he makes a really compelling argument for why it is that we need to get mindful about our feelings. And we know this. We know that we are feeling multiple things simultaneously. We know that our feeling selves, that part of us that feels, is enormously complex. There's a lot of mystery associated with why we feel, how we feel, what we make it mean. But it behooves us greatly to develop some literacy in our feelings, in our emotions. And he lays out with a lot of research why it is, especially now at this time in history, that we really need to get serious about understanding so that we might better meet up with and manage our feelings, our emotional states. So a couple of things that I want to say about his work, and I'm going to talk with you right now about how this can impact you professionally. So Dr. Mark Brackett is the director of the Yale University Center for Emotional Intelligence, and he's been there for a long time. And in his work, Permission to Feel, which is just a culmination of many, many years studying what it means to be emotionally intelligent, he tells us that we need to take our emotional literacy very, very seriously. And that leaders, and it doesn't matter if you're a designated leader in your organization or if you rise up as a leader depending on what's going on, or if you just want to be a leader of your own life, that individuals who have a deep understanding of their own emotional landscapes lead at an exponentially higher level. In other words, if I'm being led by someone who understands their emotional landscape, I am 50% more likely to be led, to trust someone who leads from a sense of emotional literacy. I will be less impacted by burnout. I will be more productive. I will be more inspired, and I will be more connected to my colleagues if my leader has an understanding of his or her emotional landscape. You are an individual of much greater depth. You are a better relational partner. You are a better friend and family member when you have a sense of your own emotional landscape. So Dr. Brackett has created what he calls the RULER acronym, RULER. And if you have a pen and paper, I want you to just write down what each of the letters mean of this acronym, because they really are, RULER is a key to understanding what it is to be emotionally literate, what it means to understand our emotional landscape. So R means, do I have the capacity to recognize that I'm feeling in the first place? I can tell you that stress response often knocks us out of our capacity and our connection to what it is that we're really feeling. And there are plenty of people around us who don't know what they're feeling or that they're feeling. So do I have the capacity to recognize my own emotions and the emotions of those around me? Can I be in the midst of others? Can I be on a Zoom meeting with my colleagues and read and feel how they're doing emotionally? Right? This mechanism, this virtual mechanism or forum that we're now sort of forced into, we've got to really pay attention to and listen for the emotions of those around us. So R is recognition. You. Do I have a capacity to understand the causes of my feelings and emotions and the consequences of them? Do I have a capacity to understand, for example, where all my anger really comes from? Do I have the capacity to understand the consequences of it when I'm not expressing it in clean ways, clean and productive ways? So understanding is the U, R-U-L. Do I have the ability to label what I'm feeling, to give it a name? So many of us struggle with this. Children, teens, adults, it doesn't matter who you are. We struggle. Think about your own training in feelings and emotion. Most of us didn't have it unless we sought out a course in emotional intelligence. It's not part of our learning. And many of us had really good feeling and emotional teachers, and many of us did not. E stands for expression. And this is really what next time is about. Do I have the capacity, once I know what I'm feeling, do I have the capacity to express it, no matter what it is, appropriately, safely, and to take into consideration the context, timing, and the culture within which I'm expressing? So there are cultural differences in the way that we understand, articulate, and express emotion. I always have to think about context. You've had experiences where you've expressed an emotion and quickly said to yourself, this was not the right time. This was not the right context, right? But this takes a lot of awareness and it takes a lot of intention to get clear about expression. And next time is really important because we'll talk about, now that I know what I'm feeling, how do I manage it and sort of come into some form of self-regulation? Can I self-regulate? So that's the E, and then the R is about regulation. Regulation feels harsh to me because it feels like constraint and limitation. What we really want to think about when we think about the idea of regulation is, am I able to manage the variety of my emotional states in a way that I can actually function in life, that I can achieve my goals, and that I can enjoy well-being. Because we know that individuals who have difficulty managing themselves emotionally have difficulty achieving goals, getting things done, being effective, and have difficulties with their own well-being. You know, their immunity might be compromised. They might experience higher levels of anxiety and depression. Might just experience a level of unhappiness. So ruler is a nice way for us to touch in, to ask ourselves, where might I need a little bit of work or a little more information or education? Is it in the area of recognition? Is it in the area of understanding? Is it in the area of being able to label or name what I'm feeling? Is it in the area of being able to express appropriately with timing, context, and culture in mind? Is it in the area of managing? We all can, this is like a lifelong process. I don't believe you ever get perfect at any of this, but if it's on your radar, wow, that makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference in being able to sort of track where you're at with it, and also where you might want to grow, because we can always grow in terms of our emotional intelligence and well-being. So here's some things that I want to tell you that are very true about feelings. Number one, they are impermanent. And if the whole Zoom call shut down and you forget everything that I said prior to this moment, this is what I would want you to take away. Our feeling states are impermanent, and we get really freaked out about how we feel, myself included, because we often fall into this assumption that I'm going to feel like this forever. I have never been perpetually overjoyed. I've never been perpetually happy. I've never been perpetually angry. I've never been perpetually grief-stricken. Feelings come and they go. This is true. So I can always know that no matter what it is that I'm feeling, I can make space for it, because it is not going to be my permanent state. Feelings have what we call in mindfulness feeling tones. Feelings have a tone to them. And generally speaking, a feeling tone falls into one of three categories. A feeling tone can be really pleasant. I like the way I feel when I'm watching the rainfall. Or I love the way I feel when I'm with this person. Or I love the way that I'm feeling while I'm meditating. So pleasant. Feelings can also have a tone of unpleasantness. I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. I never want to feel this way again. And then feelings can carry the tone of neutrality, which is, I don't really have any sense of this at all. I don't really have an opinion about it. I'm not drawn towards it. I'm not resisting against it. So in almost any given moment, you can ask yourself, is how I'm feeling carrying a tone of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutrality? So here's what's important about feeling tones. When I love the way I feel about something, this is very human, by the way, I want more of it. I want to hold on to it forever. So there's this grasping of it. the grasping of anything. I want to attach to it. I don't want this to ever go away. It's like watching the rainfall or the sunset and saying, I never want to lose this moment. I don't want it to go away. Or falling in love and grasping onto it so tightly. I don't want to ever feel any other way for this person, right? I don't want this person to ever leave my life. This grasping is in and of itself stressful. Wanting more, never wanting it to leave. It's what we do. It's okay. But there's something really beautiful about this feels really good. And I've got an open hand about it, like, yeah. And I know that this is going to come and it's going to go. That kind of mindfulness allows you to enjoy the moment even better. It's sort of like being on vacation and you're thinking, I love this so much. I love this so much. And then you start thinking about, when am I going to come back here? And you're looking, you're researching your calendar and flights and when you can return because you want to hold on to it. And then you're completely missing the moment. Unpleasant is resistance. I don't want this. I don't want to be feeling this. This is so unpleasant. And so resistance, like grasping, also carries with it a lot of stressful energy. So again, the loss that I'm feeling right now, I don't want to be feeling this way. I have to be very, very mindful of the kind of resistance to the pain of loss versus, loss is present in my life right now. It really hurts. Like there's this notion that the heart can hurt when we've lost. Physically, it feels like a pain in our heart, in our chest. If I can just be with it, it passes. It might come through 5 minutes later. It might come through later in the day, but it does pass. I'm not in that state perpetually. And if I could really feel it, it adds to my humanity. There's something very raw and authentic about not resisting the unpleasant emotion. And then when I'm in a neutral phase, I don't really have a feeling about this one way or another. I just have to be mindful because I want to ask myself, am I in some kind of denial about what is? Or perhaps there is just neutrality and that's okay. So an act of mindfulness is one in which you can just check in with feeling tones. You don't even have to know what the feeling is. So for example, tomorrow morning when you wake up, before you get out of bed, just check in with yourself and ask, is what I'm feeling right now a sense of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutrality? For example, I might wake, and upon the moment of waking, as the sun is streaming in through the window, feel that to be really pleasant. And then when I start to think about my calendar the day ahead, boom, that moment quickly shifts into another feeling tone, which might be unpleasant. Just notice. It's the noticing that's the mindfulness. So really when we come into the next 3 lessons, today's lesson included, we're moving ourselves out of this idea that mindfulness has to be this formal practice where I'm sitting with my eyes closed, right? That's part of it. But now we're starting to see how mindfulness gets integrated into everything we do, so that mindfulness isn't a doing, it becomes a way of being. It becomes a part of who you are. I am a mindful person. And we can begin to cultivate that state of being mindful, a beingness, in working with our feelings. So it's 10:16. The goal of lesson 5 is awareness. And I want to take you through a practice that's going to help you to become aware of feelings. And when we come out of the practice, I'm going to tell you what happened while we were in it and sort of what the logic is behind this particular protocol for meditation. So again, I want you to drop your pens and come into a comfortable seated position. And closing the eyes or not, if you're not closing the eyes, remember just to keep the eye muscles nice and soft so the eyes are kind of dreamlike. And I want to invite you to bring into mind a feeling state that you've been experiencing recently that has been tough for you. Maybe it's anger, fear. It could even be joy. You know, sometimes joy can be tough for us, but just something you've been grappling with a little bit. And so I want you to just bring that into your mind. And I want you to locate this feeling in your body. In other words, when it's present, where does it live in your body? Where does it take up residence? And just notice. And maybe take your awareness to that place. If this feeling had a color, what would it be? Whatever arises, just let it arise. Don't search too hard for an answer, but what would it be? If this feeling had a size, how big is it? How small is it? What is its shape, if it had a shape? How about a temperature? If this feeling had a sound, what would it be? If you could walk yourself out to the very edge of this feeling, what do you see beyond it? If this feeling had a message for you, what would it say? Don't stretch too far for an answer. Just let whatever arises, arise. And can you just be, just for now, can you just be with this feeling? Just allowing it to be there, just as it is. And can you be with it in a kind way? Gently guide your awareness very slowly back to your breath, just as it is. And again, this is your time whenever you're ready, but only when you're ready. Open your eyes, allowing the light back in. So I want to tell you what happened. So I asked you to bring in a feeling you've sort of been grappling with. First thing I asked you to do was to locate it in the body, like if it lived somewhere or if it was visiting, where is it landing for you? And then once you connected to where it is in the body, I asked you to, we almost went into investigative mode, which is, what if it had a color, a shape, a size, a temperature, a sound? If you could walk to its edge and peer over, what would you find? Does it have a message? What is it saying to you, if it's saying anything at all? Can you just let it be there? And then can you let it be there with kindness? So step one of that whole process is, this is what I'm feeling. You named it for yourself in some way. You locate it in your body because emotion, feelings, we feel sensation. So they live somewhere in the body, even if temporarily. The third step is most important, because when we start to ask questions like an investigator would and get curious about the feeling, that is the moment when we begin to separate from it. It's sort of like I'm studying it. So there's me and there's this feeling. So I am no longer it, and it is no longer me. And whoa, that is when we start to train ourselves. That space creates that detachment, which provides us with some relief. Really a powerful step. And then can I just let it be? And can I let it be there kindly? In your formal meditation practice, between now and the next time I see you, consider this as a protocol. You don't have to even remember all of the steps, but maybe just come into your comfortable seat and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where is it living right now in me? Locate it in the body, and then start, what color is it? Sound, investigate it, create that distance. Again, I talked about how mindfulness can begin to set you free. This is part of that freeing process. I want to be a feeling person, and I want my feeling states to serve me, not to overwhelm me, override me, torment me, imprison me. So this is how I begin to develop a relationship with my feelings that becomes really, really productive. anyone have any thoughts about that process and their experience with it? I just would love to hear a little bit of feedback about that, regardless of what it is. Anyone? Thing about curiosity, always remember this. This is one of those things too. If you forget everything I've said today, here's another thing to remember. Whenever you can get curious about anything, especially if it's something that is causing you some of that suffering, the brain almost automatically leaves stress state. Try to be curious and sort of investigative and detective-like in terms of how you're feeling, and feel stressed out, negative, overwhelmed at the same time. It's almost impossible. When you think about yourself as a child and places in your life about which you were really curious, the example that always comes to mind is when I learned, probably at 8 years of age, about archaeology. And I started digging in my backyard, and I would dig for hours, hoping that I would dig up a lost land. I was so curious about that. And those hours spent digging, I felt no fear. I didn't feel any anxiety, overwhelm, negativity. So curiosity can serve us in bringing us out of stress response. So if you can get curious about things that you're feeling that cause you stress, it's another very mindful pathway out of feeling very grasping of our feelings, very resistant, or just that sort of, neutrality that is void of any kind of energy. So curiosity is a mindful friend, right? So just as a means of recap, so today we began with the self-compassion break, 3 steps. This is hard. I'm not alone. And so just be kind. Take yourself through that. Carry that one in your back pocket. Work with it between now and the next time I see you, or for 30 days, especially if you tend to be really hard on yourself. And we talked about why emotional feeling literacy is so important. We talked about the truth about feelings. They're impermanent. There's feeling tones. And then I walked you through that protocol for really cultivating self-awareness. What is it that I'm feeling? Label it. Where is it showing up in the body? And then going into that curiosity, investigative mode, letting it just be, and adding on kindness. And then coming out of the meditation. So I want to have us depart with just one final meditative moment. It'll just be less than a minute. With a beautiful poem called Allow. And when we use poetry or readings as a form of mindfulness meditation, we just want to close the eyes or keep the gaze soft and just allow the words to land. And don't struggle to make any of this meaningful. Just allow the words to come in. Just allow them to land. Allow, by Dana Faulds. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt or containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. So allow, and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in, the wild and the weak, the fear, the fantasies, the failures, the successes. Allow it all in. When loss rips off the doors of the heart, or sadness veils your vision with despair, your practice of allowing becomes simply bearing the truth. In choosing to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed before your eyes. So allow. Allow. Allow it all. Whenever you're ready, open your eyes. I'll stay on for a few more minutes if any of you have any questions or comments. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Percy. Good seeing you again.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Tell everyone I said hello.